I had very good fortune, and I want to talk about this, especially with John, given the experience in retail and in real estate before. But I lived in downtown Carmel for a year and a half.
I bet that was
Um,
painful. Yeah.
it wasn't bad. I got to tell you, it wasn't bad. It was probably one of the more joyous experiences of my life in terms of not living at home and sort of being abroad.
Yeah.
But it had that feel where it was big enough that it didn't feel like everyone knows everything going on, but small
Right.
enough that you still walking to the coffee shop would see 3 or 4 people that you know. Um, and I get the feeling from my time in Solana Beach that it has a very similar level of scale, if you will, in that way.
Yeah, it's got a good vibe.
It really does. It really does. We both, as partners in the business, but then also separately, have both been on this street now for over, John, 20 years.
Yeah,
And
22. Yeah.
20 some odd years. And we've seen it evolve and change naturally as the years have gone by. It used to be Cedros Design District only, and now
Mhm.
it is, it's got cafes and wineries and craft brew. But we are literally like, we're 2 blocks from the beach here, and
Mhm.
across from the Billy App, if you're familiar with that, the
Mhm.
Billy App, which is that music venue.
Sure.
And we love, just like you walk out the street and we'll see like 20 people we know. We also have an interest in some other businesses or a business on the street. So we love it. Coming to work is it's a pleasure because it's a great little community, and a lot of creative studios as well. So I would say, yeah, there's a similarity to Carmel for sure.
Yeah, I think a little bit more vibrant, if I could say. I mean, at the time I was in Carmel, I was let me think, I was in my almost mid to late 30s,
Mhm.
and I was single at the time. And Carmel is probably not, if you're a single guy in his 30s, is not probably the ideal place to be. It's far more,
Right.
it's an older demographic. But
Right.
I mean, in terms of Santa Cruz and Big Sur and going out into the Carmel Valley and how many experiences one can, that's one of the amazing things about California, just the number of experiences someone can have, whether it's they want to be around 10,000 people or they want to be in an almost meditative state in nature, to they want to ski, to they want, I mean, the amount of experiences available to someone within a reasonable drive radius,
Mhm.
I don't know anywhere in the world that comes even close.
You're
Yeah.
you're so right. And part of what we thought would be fun to talk about today a little bit would be relative to something that has presented itself for us as a firm and personally over the last 6 months. But to your point, we live just 3 miles east of here,
Mhm.
but we go from coast to 3 miles east. There's people, our neighbors have horses, goats, pigs. We live in a eucalyptus grove. It's a totally different, like you feel like you're in an entirely different, county, but yet you could walk to the beach basically. It's a really, like Carmel, there are a lot of similarities.
And the number of microclimates. I mean, I remember the idea of being in Carmel, and I was living we were working for one of the major developers on the revitalization of Fort Ord. And in my previous life before Urban Bonfire, I was part of an international real estate development firm. And I'm sharing this with you, John, because in reading your bio, there's some amazing um, uh, similarities, if you will. Um,
Mhm.
my firm was charged with the development of the main streets of new urbanist projects in mixed use
Mhm.
environments, college towns, resorts, working with cities on the revitalization of downtowns or main streets. And my role, and it's rare that you see it, and Janet, I saw it in your experience as well, was experiential retail. That was my role within the company, planning and working with local operators to develop every coffee shop, bakery, restaurant, yoga studio, hotel that would make these places come to life. And everything I learned about it and what actually became Urban Bonfire was a passionate part of my youth and my story, but with the with the intelligence or the data coming from what is the internet going to do in terms of changing the way we have relationships with brands and with products. Female driven family purchasing, which, you know, one of the things about Outdoor Kitchen is that the female demographic was historically ignored from outdoor cooking and outdoor kitchen for much of its history. And all of these factors helped me to incubate Urban Bonfire, not into just a retail store, which is what it was when it started, but trying to address a lot of the things I'd learned in real estate. And you come from, it seems like from your experience, a very similar path of working. I remember with Fitch Richardson and Smith.
Right.
How did that? I know we're jumping around a little bit, but I'm excited because of, and I can't finish our conversation without talking about your mantra that you post on your website, which is so effing cool, and I love the way you did it. I'm going to get back to that part, but maybe John, can you tell me a little bit about your experience and working in product development, real estate, all these things, and Janet, yours in experiential retail, and how you culminated that into a firm that is atypical in that you, in a very self-declared way, you basically say, for us, it's not about residential or architectural, commercial, it's about working with clients on vision and design in a creative environment and platform that is not linear and is not labeled and has complete parameters on it. So I know it's a long-winded question, but I want to hear more than anything else about your story, your experience, how you came together, and so yeah, have
Sure.
at it,
Well,
because I want to hear it all.
yeah, I'll do an edited version up front. I think as a preface, if you may or may not recall, but Eames did a wonderful diagram, you know, probably 50, 60 years ago, where it shows overlapping arches of interest, office interest, public interest, client interest, and there's an intersection there in the center. And the interesting thing about that concept is that if you look at Eames' background, he was an architect, but obviously did product and graphics and exhibitry, et cetera. So he didn't see, unlike a lot of design professionals within specific industries, there's a silo that you have to protect. And then you build bridges across and you do another silo and you transfer information to that. I think the key is that the more holistic and the more you blend the disciplines, the more nutritional it becomes, and that it's not ownership based or knowledge based or creativity based. It starts at first with an understanding that there needs to be a problem defined that's accurate to be solved, not just accept what's given to you as the problem. So just quickly, when I graduated undergraduate degree from the University of Illinois as industrial design, and one of my professors said, don't go and interview, go where you want to live and get a job. And I thought that was a brilliant, you know, piece of philosophy. So I like to ski, so I moved to Salt Lake City and got a job working for an exhibit design firm there. So, and they did museums and exhibitry, and as a product designer, I was the only one there. They had architects and et cetera, but no product designers. So that was an amazing experience because there's research involved in museums, research in exhibits. You have to understand the information of video and topography and sequence of traveling through a space. So that was my first, you know, job right out of school, which I think was extremely powerful. And then I was offered a job back in Chicago for a large corporation to help define their brand within the retail environment, which involved architecture, interior, graphic, user experience, working with engineers, and it was an international firm. And from there, I went back to University of Illinois. I got my master's under the industrial design program, but it was in Japanese design and philosophy. So my professors were in landscape architecture, theater, which was kabuki, et cetera, on and on. So that was an amazing 2 years of just, you know, deep down philosophical aspects of trying to understand this complex aspect of what design is. And then I was offered a teaching position at Montana State, which I accepted, taught there, went back to another position at Ohio State and taught design in the industrial design department there, which is a combination of graphic, product, and interior. And then offered a position for Richardson Smith at that time to start their retail design sector, because they had product design, engineering, no interior whatsoever, and no retail. So I started that. And we grew that to one of the top 20 retail design firms in the United States. And then we merged with a company called Fitch, which is out of London. So at that time, it was Fitch, Richardson Smith, and eventually transitioned to Fitch. And so during that time, you, again, get involved in a whole bunch of user experience-based research up front before you even start the project. It's not about the design, it's about solving the problem and making sure that the foundations are clearly articulated as to what need to be addressed, who's on the team at what stages. But it's always a holistic, blended, multidisciplinary approach. And that's how we've always practiced. So in 1988, I moved out here to start the firm here. And with that principle, which was not practiced in Southern California, in San Diego. It's primarily architectural firms, interior firms, and graphic design firms. No one was really doing the three different blending at all. So that's where we established that, that core philosophy, in that we define the problem, we integrate the brand within the commercial environment, and typically for the first 20 years of practice, it was all commercial. Retail, banks, restaurants, etc., and grew pretty large to the point that we had 2 offices at one time. But as a preface to that, how I met Janet is that we were doing the America's Cup Village, and the America's Cup Village was in the early '90s, and Janet was working with a PR firm at the time. And we met under that project, which is a fantastic project to design an entire village on a little peninsula in the downtown San Diego for the stage, the exhibitory, the venue, etc. And so from that point on, we've been in San Diego, moved up to Solana Beach in 1998, and have been there since. So that was a quick summary of 30-something years practice.
It's quite diverse. And Janet, can you add to that a little bit about where you came from and how your story, if you will? I'd very much like to hear that.
Absolutely. So mine is a more circuitous, non-traditional path to how I arrived here today. But my experience primarily started out in kind of placemaking and actually product marketing for a large restaurant chain.
Okay.
And that was kind of my first real job out of college, was helping them create a unique consumer experience, how to activate the consumer when they enter the store. And so I learned a lot about, research and how to really use research to guide your design decisions in the restaurant environment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then I moved into the creative side of that business, helping with directing, advertising, voice, narrative, point of purchase materials, again, to better activate the consumer. I was in that business for almost 10 years. And then I pivoted entirely, and we share a great love of animals. John and I, as do many of our colleagues, our pets are our kids, essentially. Mm-hmm. So completely pivoted and started a small retail chain called Metropolis, which is a small, it's like Whole Foods meets, Crate and Barrel for pets, but we didn't sell animals. So we started this really cool, pioneering retail experience. So taking my experience in placemaking, and then partnering with John and his firm, which at the time I was not part of, and created this really cool environment for pet parents to come in and bring their pets and find really cool, unique products. So expanded that and grew it. Ultimately sold that off. And then when we sold it, or stepped out of it, I should say, we, John and I have always known we had complementary skill sets in placemaking, in design, in brand development. So we joined forces, gosh, 11 years ago. And we've been at it ever since, and really evolved the offerings of the firm. As you said, we are non-traditional, and at times we'd struggle with like the identity crisis, like what? Because people would be like, okay, wait a second, you do space, then you do brand, and then, you know. But really, we are a creative studio, and we're all about creative problem solving. Again, the interior experience being, you know, kind of our primary offering, but brand activation is something that we really enjoy. And so.
My hypothesis, and I could be wrong, is that may have been more of a challenging explanation 5 or 10 years ago than it is today, when now, you know, unified voice, omni-channel, customer experience that goes from web to retail to event to social to every packaging, where unified voice and channel is at the very top of the food chain that every great company is now seeking. And you know, the idea of trying to align 3, 4, 5, and I've been in this myself with, you know, I'm an investor in a 3 location quick serve food concept here in Montreal, and also have interest in an award-winning bakery. All of these things very much passion projects, but we're just in the midst of completing our 3rd store. And I've learned so much in the last 2 years of Urban Bonfire, working so much with the design community. And I have yet to find a firm that can handle the architecture and the design and understand visuals and logo identity and packaging and font, and with one united. It is always the greatest challenge is to align common vision.
Well, also as in your roles that you've played, it's extremely difficult to play marriage counselor with 4 different design firms. And what starts happening is that you have obviously you have ownership and ego and identity and who gets credit for what. And for clients, especially at the corporate level, they don't have time for that. I mean, who has time to babysit people? And so when you work with a firm that has the resources to understand the language is combined, it's not a style, it's a true language that has to be communicated. And it's not competitive. And that becomes simpler. It's still complex, but it's more simpler in that it's not schizophrenic when it gets released in the marketplace. It's like, oh yeah, I can see where the architect stopped, and now here's where the interior person stepped in. And then they handed it off at the very end to the graphic people. Oh, and then they threw some plants in at the very end, you know. And we forgot about the signage. So let's get this. Oh, we don't have a permit. Okay, so now that's 6 months out. So it's almost a gift to a client to have one point of contact, and there's a steward for the brand, and that steward makes sure that all disciplines are integrated seamlessly.
With that defined or more defined, if you will, role, does that come also with greater responsibility and sensitivity, because there is so much riding on you intermingling all of those areas of expertise? So is there a more of an emotional investment, because I'm not just the architect, I'm not just the designer, I'm not just the graphic designer, I am really, in your words, you are the steward of that customer experience in many senses of the word.
Well, I think in the first place, it's difficult to find like-minded individuals on the corporate side, and that's why we've transitioned a bit more into residential, because it's people either get it or they don't, and there's a discipline that has to be followed to execute creative solutions. And it's not like saying I want to get in shape and I bought the book and I read it. Now, how come I'm not in shape? You know, you have to execute, you know, the physicality of what needs to be done, and you have to coordinate those disciplines. And then Janet, you had a comment too.
Yeah, can I say though that I would say a lot of it has to do with, it's a really good question. And in terms of like saying pressure isn't the word I'd use. A lot of it has to do with the scale of the types of organizations we work with. We tend to work with like kind of we work with some corporations, but it tends to be more mid-scale, you know, smaller organizations because they often will use us. We're their outsourced design firm, we're the outsourced kind of brand agency. We can be all those things, whereas some of the larger companies, they want multiple agencies, because then there's just also just, you're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of committees, a lot of teams. So we tend to work with smaller organizations. So to John's point, yes, residential is certainly we've increased our residential portfolio significantly over the last 10 years, but we still work with lots of, you know, commercial developers and workplace. We've done some boutique hotels. We're not doing the Marriotts, right? We're doing the smaller, you know, boutique hotel, you know, environment. So, but I think what, you know, to your point, 5 years ago, this might have been required more explanation for some people, but now it's actually just, I love the fact that people will come to us and say, okay, you know, help me create my space. Okay, so we help them articulate and define the vision for their workplace or what have you. And then it's, I need to curate some better visuals, you know, to help, you know, bring life to our brand. Okay, help them with that. Well, I need video. You know, okay, let's come up with like tone and voice and video and what. So it's fun, actually. It's fun and I enjoy that they come to us for all these things, and we have a really diverse team of collaborators that we work with that help us get it done. And so, yeah.
Well, I would like to, if I can, I'd like to drill down a little bit on residential, which, as you just said, has been not the entire, but it's been more of the dominance, if you will, in the last 5 years. And our goal as a company and brand has never been about the appliance, the cabinet, the color, the handle, far from it. At a macro level, our goal has been to say this, and it stems very much from, again, my childhood and where the whole Urban Bonfire brand and story came from, which I only figured out about, you know, 8 or 9 years ago. It was sort of in there somewhere, and I had this kind of aha moment on it. I believe that, and especially in places like California, where you have, you know, weather that is remarkable for the vast majority of the year,
That's changing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm empathetic to the fires and what you've dealt with. I know it's been a very, very difficult time. But outside of major catastrophe, I believe that people enjoy, make memories in, use their outdoor spaces for connection, entertaining, making memories in as much, or in certain cases more, than their indoor environments. My goal as a company and as a brand is to try to say, if that is the case, why has the consumer had such a lesser than experience in outdoor kitchen entertaining space design, material selection, comparatively to the indoors for such a long time? And to try to bring the two up to an even level. And you made an excellent point earlier where, you know, one professional would hand it off to another, and the designer stopped here, and that wasn't me, that was somebody else. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard and seen projects where the indoors is design down to like the knob on the 2-year-old's closet's underwear drawer.
Yeah.
And the outdoors is a stucco island from the big box store with a rusty grill in it. Nothing to do with budget, nothing to do with desire, to do primarily with fragmentation, to your earlier point. In that, in many cases, their historic interior designer has believed that their role finishes at the patio door. That's the landscaper. My job is finished. And with
or the contractor.
Or the contractor. And with the utmost of respect to landscape design and build, to contractor, these people are not typically kitchen and entertainment and living space designers the way interiors are. This has been our mission to bridge. And it's a long way of asking a question or trying to bring up the next topic, which is, have you seen a change in request, prioritization, investment in, meaning of outdoor space in the last 5 or 7 or 10 years in your specific relationships with clients?
Janet?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say more pronounced, I mean, not shockingly, is in the last 8 months. I think it has become, I mean, there's definitely been you know, and we have numerous projects we can point to where we help guide them to create and activate a space that's meaningful and functional and beautiful, and that is not an afterthought. And some of this stems from clients we've had that are foodies, you know, and they want all the bells and whistles, and it's not just having a pretty place to sit outside, you know, it's about creating a really cool functional space. But I would say a tremendous amount of, there's been a tremendous increase in this deliverable in the last 8 months. And there's kind of a funny little story that we thought might be fun to share relative.
Please.
Okay, so it's perhaps neither here nor there, but it feeds into this whole, sorry, I've got some background noise happening right now. Okay, just as long as that too. Anyway, so actually, can you hold on for 1 second?
Of course.
Sorry, 1 moment.
No rush. It's all good. We're cash.
You know,
No problem.
I can, you know, tailgate on that a little bit in that I think the challenge has been and is changing a bit is, you know, you live in where you do. It's a totally different geographical context of climate and expected behavior. I grew up in the Midwest. You know, you bunker down in the winter. You know, you shut it down. You go inside. You can, you know, why would I go outside and activate anything out there? Because you know it's not comfortable to be there. So there's a paradigm that has occurred over the years within cultural and geographical areas of lifestyle, what you do during certain seasons, and so I always think that has to be acknowledged. You know, a lot of people think California is, you know, 72 degrees all year round, and it's not. You know, it changes. It gets cold, it gets warm, it gets hot, it gets windy, it gets whatever, and so those things have to be addressed. And again, back more in a volumetric way. And I think the architectural perimeter as defined by an exterior wall, and then the interior does this, and then you go outside, and then that's a different practice, that's a different responsibility. Yeah, I think fortunately enough, if you look at, you know, started in the late 40s or early 40s to the 50s, you know, that transition of an overused term mid-century, but you know, the horizontal planes extend outward. You blur the definition of where your living space is, how you activate those spaces, what the spaces are for, the transparency versus, you know, I grew up in a brick house, you know, with windows, you know, that you look out and, you know, and you close the windows down and keep the heat in and et cetera. So, I think there needs to be an effort perhaps maybe to communicate that it's not about the cabinetry. It's not about the spec of the stainless steel appliance that goes outside. Again, that's sequential, you know, that's a very tactical approach to problem solving, and it's not strategic. And the more that you see this as a blended lifestyle environment, And that's one of the things that we bring into the residential side is the commercial background that we have of it's got to be correct. It's got to be the code. It's got to be bulletproof.
Yep.
And it's not. Oh, it's not my responsibility. You know, you do that. Oh, I don't. I just pick stuff out of catalogs, right? And that's a challenge too.
Well, then basically, John, if I can, to your point, that is, how could you better encapsulate that than, and I love it, design in the absence of thoughtful content is decoration.
Yeah.
Literally from your mantra. I mean, it's so simple, but it's the simplest way to say something profound that I have heard,
right.
because there is a football field between decoration and design, and often they can be at the consumer level, either from lack of awareness, lack of vocabulary, lack of understanding.
Right.
Those can be easily blurred. Janet, before you left, you wanted to come back to that discussion point.
Yes. Yeah, I thought it just might be something kind of fun and novel to share, kind of as it relates to what's been going on and the need to kind of create, you know, the fact that so many of us are looking, because of the pandemic, so many of our clients, us included, are looking for creative ways to activate space in our homes. We're looking at our homes with a more creative eye, and looking at underutilized space, thinking, what, you know, oh, this could be a small office, or oh, this could be, you know, this space over here that's filled with junk, or just filled with like furnishings that no one ever sits on. Like, what can we do with this space? So naturally, and this is what we're all experiencing, we all know that we're social creatures. We're looking for creative ways to gather and commune and be social, that's safe and that is outdoors. And so that's also novel. So essentially, long story short, is when everything shut down in March, we live in an area, we're in this eucalyptus grove, and we have a canyon that's below our home that's part of our property. So we're fortunate we have a little more land. But needless to say, we have this canyon, okay? And this is where we've lived there for 17 years, and we've really not done anything with it. It's where scary things go bump in the night. We know coyotes live down there. There's like wood piles with snakes. There's possums and rats and big spiders and things that so we would go down there occasionally with the dogs and poke around and see coyote poop, and we're like, you know, and then pretty much do most of our living up above, okay, at our house. Well, during the pandemic, you know, I would take a lot of my conference calls walking just up and down our driveway, and I would meander into that little canyon, and I would sit there. I would be on my calls going, God, I need somewhere to sit. Like, there's nowhere for me to sit down here except for that log, and it's covered in spiders. So I order a swing, and I have it delivered, and I hang it from a tree branch. It's like 25 feet, you know, up. Okay, so I hang it from the tree, and so I'm on the swing. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool now. I've got a place to sit and take my calls. And then I'm like, oh, what else is down here? So I installed a wildlife camera to see like what is actually making all that noise at night. So I install a wildlife camera to discover that first night, a bobcat is like smiling, and it's an infrared motion activated camera. There's a bobcat that we had no idea lives in our canyon. Okay. Next night, a deer. Like, we do not see deer ever. There is a deer living down there. Then there's a coyote family. There's the bunnies. So this cam, I called it my backyard COVID cam. And so I have it on my Instagram, and I post it for friends. Okay, so long story short, my friends see this, our friends see it, and they're like, this is amazing. You have a wildlife corridor. Like, let's go camping down there sometime. So we have a camp out in March. We get tents, and about 8 of us spend the night down there. And I'm like, this is pretty cool. So then we cleared out some space, and we found this canopy of trees that created a perfect outdoor living room. So we cleared out all the dead wood piles, and we found an old farm table on, you know, used for like $100. We put the farm table down there. We put benches. We found a bar, like for zero, like somebody was giving away this little wood bar. Got a chandelier that's like battery operated candles. We strung lights, and now we have this amazing outdoor living room in a space that's surrounded by trees that for 17 years was there all along, but never really. And we have since then had birthday parties. I hosted a baby shower a few weeks ago in it. We've had other campouts. We've had musicians come. We sit in the circle on logs. So the point is, like, we in our own lives, we too, found this really cool little gem that existed that were it not for, this whole experience, we never would have activated it. So
And it's an amazing story and firsthand account, but I think you've hit a number of incredible points. I think one of the big ones, and I don't like the term silver lining, but one of the big ones that COVID has put all of us in terms of, is more time at home to actually look at something that was a tree branch and is now a swing, and had one use, and through basic shift in thinking about or envisioning or having the time to just dream or imagine, it changes definition completely. And I think that finally, and it's really getting started, that the idea that the outdoors is not the afterthought, it's not the deck, it's not a backyard, it's a room.
yes,
And it is a room that can, on an economics level, be activated on a per square foot basis, I believe, for far less cost than almost any indoor space in the home. If you look at the amount of what you can do with $100 table and a light and some stuff, and bringing those people together, the amount of emotional goodwill and experiential impact
yes,
to cost ratio
yes.
is remarkable.
It really is. No, you're so right. And what, on top of all this, the overarching message here is, it has brought so much joy to our lives. I mean, now people hear about our camp, everyone knows about the camp, and they're like, they want an invitation to the camp. And I've had people of all ages in this baby shower head, that people are like, this is magical. I'm thinking, we're just sitting in the forest on some stumps. But like, I think, yeah, it's just that it's given us the time to appreciate what's around us, and to
I think that human psychology, whether we can articulate it or we know it or not, in outdoor environments changes. And I think it goes back to our youth where, when we were outdoors, you typically had to envision and create, whether that was a fort or fictitious characters or playing in whatever it may be, you had to create your world. And there were a number of dynamic elements that you couldn't control. Your mom yelling at you to come in for dinner, it snows, it rains, it's sunny, it's windy, it's whatever, you have to adapt. Whereas in indoors, it's a much more controlled environment. Things that really change. Lights are on, they're off, the TV's on, it's off, but it's much more structured. I think as soon as we are brought back into that place that is not within our complete control, that I don't always know what's coming next or what to expect, because I could be sitting comfortably and a spider's on my ankle.
right.
Also,
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
please, John, please.
That's hilarious.
Take it from there.
Yeah, because what also happens is that it's unless you have whether it's part of your DNA or part of your education, the ability to understand how space is defined. It's not horizontally, it's not vertical, it's volumetric. And the volume is what we subconsciously feel. And when we ask clients about places that they feel inspired or that they feel so comfortable in, and examples of where those have been, typically they're never in their home when they state this. It's always on a trip someplace. It could be at a hotel or a restaurant or at the forest. And what this always comes down to is that it's the volume that is informing them and giving them either, I'm not walking in this place. I'm turning around. I'm not going to eat here. I'm not going to shop here. I'm leaving. It's the volumetric senses that hit us that informs us whether we are comfortable or not. And I think back to a point that you made earlier about that transition from that vertical wall to the outside, it's volume. Interior is volume, outside is volume. And the more that you break that barrier down, the paradigm of that, into the aspect that it is all connected, but it's not based on the floor material or the glass spec or the cabinetry spec, indoor, outdoor, whatever. It all comes down to the context of touch points in sequence. And that's key. And in your background in the retail side, you all know it's about sequence. When you walk in, everybody goes figure eight, everybody does this, right? How do you enhance that and make it more comfortable?
I remember, and it's obviously going to sound a little bit, a little cheesy maybe, but one of the great lines in superhero movies, I think it's Spider-Man, is with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, yeah.
And the two of you, and the sheer nature of the firm that you have created has a lot of responsibility for the number of aspects of a project that you undertake at either the residential or the commercial level, because you have this harmonious practice, and it's not done in silos, to your earlier point, what we've already discussed. Where at this point, after so many years of doing this, where do you seek the inspiration? Where do you find it? How does it come to you to make each project not only fun and vibrant and keep you engaged and interested, but also that you are giving your very best to each client, saying, do you need to seek continuous inspiration to help inform the inspiration that you provide to your clients? And if so, where and how do you find that, or how does that come to you?
Well, Janet is the Chief Inspiration Officer, so I'll let her take that.
Well, I would say, I mean, it always has been, my number one superpower is curiosity. I always love exploring and novelty. So travel has always been a huge inspiration. Doesn't matter if you're in the middle of the desert or walking the streets of, Tokyo. Travel has always been a huge part of it for us, just seeing how others live, and there's so much inspiration that can be drawn from that. So I would say that is where so much of it comes from. Now, that's not as possible these days. However, when you have an e-bike, the world is your oyster. So
it sure is.
I got to tell you, I mean, when the beaches were closed here in the last whatever, I put probably 800 miles on my e-bike, and in doing so, lots of inspiration. I have discovered areas in Southern California and San Diego I never knew existed. So I just think, I think it's Diana Vreeland, her quote, which I adhere to, is the I must travel, which is just, and I don't mean travel to exotic locales, just see and observe and just get out and absorb the texture and the senses of get out of your bubble. And it's also conversations with people like yourself, and engaging with creative companies like yourselves who are really innovators in their space. And so we have many, many different organizations and companies we work with that are, top of their game, and in terms of innovations and product and design. So really trying to stay connected with them. There's so many, but yeah, we collaborate with a lot of artists and architects, and having those meaningful conversations, also help in our creative process as well.
I'm a huge fan of e-biking. I up until 2 years ago, I had a Vespa, which I sold and got an e-bike, and I've never looked back. It is
best investment
just
ever.
Best investment ever. My wife and I, in August, my wife is a yoga teacher and yoga studio owner, so I don't have to tell you the impact. I'm sure you know firsthand, closing studios, and her lease came up, and I said, I think we should become a one-car family. And by using bike and walking and the occasional Uber, we've since August been a one-car family, and I've never been happier. It's wonderful. Yes. It does not feel like a compromise at all.
In fact, no, I love hearing this. You probably know this, and I should find this citation or this quote and send it to you. But there's studies have been done by neurologists and that say that when you're on a bicycle, the way your eye, the way the brain is receiving information, also the senses, the wind, there is a euphoria that is felt when you're on a bike. And without, hands down, for the last, I'd say 15 years since, not even more than 15 years, I love when we travel to get a bike, whether e-bike or not, just get on a bike.
Yep.
Because as you know, when you're on a bicycle and you're exploring, and again, whether you're looking for inspiration or not, it just comes your way. You can stop, and if you see something cool, like we were riding our bikes through Montecito a couple of weeks ago, which has incredible, beautiful architecture and gardens and just, and you see something, you're like, I'm gonna go down this alley. I don't care. I don't need to find a parking place. I don't need to do a U-turn. Just off you go, and you stop and I took a million photos of just really cool little funky, outdoor sculpture. And we've ridden bikes all over Marfa, Texas, and just selling weird little houses and funky little courtyards, and it's just the best.
Have you been to Montreal?
No, and I need to. It's on my list.
Yeah, I've been there when I was just starting out in the design as a professional for a design conference, and it was just amazing, just beautiful.
Whenever travel is allowed again, whenever that may be, from what you've just described as what moves you and the experiences of using your bike or walking and finding Montreal, and I'm obviously biased because I'm from here, it has just remarkable elements of design and old world woven with new world and technology. I think you would absolutely love it, and I hope that I'm here when you come, because I would, and just at a remarkable place. Remarkable place.
That would be great. That would be great.
We'll buy you a cocktail.
Right. I love it. No, I think that's
sounds good. Love to do that.
Yeah. Well, we were in Vancouver about 2 years ago, and that was amazing.
Yeah,
we really enjoyed that.
Vancouver's a great city as well. So remarkably different from Montreal in terms of layout, culture, experience. I mean, Montreal it's the best parts of Chicago and the best parts of New York City, and coupled in with some amazing parts of New Orleans. It's got just these, I'll say no more because nothing I'll say will articulate it. All to say is I'm willing to bet that if you come, depending on when, obviously seasonality wise, I think that you'll have a wonderful experience.
Well, there's also a depth of architecture and historical, silhouettes that you see when you're there. I recall it was powerful.
I would love
to
come.
Yeah. A lot of our city is still dates back to the late 1700s, where it was a walled fortress with original stonework, cobblestone. It's still completely.
Yeah, right.
They replaced about 9 or 10 years ago the water main that feeds the city. To give you a sense of how old that infrastructure was, the actual, to call them pipes is ridiculous. They're 8 feet in diameter. We're still wood. We're still wood.
That's amazing.
To give you a sense of how old some of the infrastructure of the city actually is. Remarkable.
That's amazing.
Remarkable.
Yeah. We'll definitely get there.
It's on the list. Official. It's official. It's happening.
Yeah. Once the science fiction movie's over, we will get there.
Right.
Last thing I want to ask you about, and I want to be mindful of your time. It is very rare that you see almost any firm, let alone a multidisciplinary creative firm, state a mantra on its website. Quite rare. And yours are fun and simple and thought-provoking and also very real, because at the same time as writing something like a strategic design process takes discipline for all parties involved, 2 sentences later, dogs are good. I think that fun and playful nature that you've accomplished in what you do it's really refreshing. And I think that it's take some of that scary architects are very serious and they draw with rulers and they don't smile, and yeah, designers are just putting color on stuff, and it's like you seem to have, whether it was premeditated or just by virtue of you as people and how you want to impart your wisdom or your vision on the world and on your clients. What made you, or what was the what inspired you to create this mantra? And without getting into all six of them, how did they, is that a work in progress? Is that your foundation? I just thought it was so cool that I really wanted to talk to you about it.
Well, I think that there are these are personality attributes of both of us, and they represent a blend of our identity as it relates to non-designers, as well as our professional background at the same time. That's my thought. Janet?
Yeah, I would say it perhaps is non-traditional, but I think a big part of what draws people to our firm, aside from, our portfolio and our approach, is us. We're a little quirky. We're not super serious. I mean, we get things done, but we are, we like to have fun. We like to insert a sense of humor. In fact, we had a lot of really weird things on our website, which we took down recently. I'm like, maybe this is too weird. But, I like to keep things weird. And, so yes, the mantra though is evocative of, like John said, our personalities and
I want to tell you, if I can, my favorite one of the six. And it's not that dogs are good. My wife would select that one. We have a new 5-month-old yellow lab at home. But I do want to talk about one, which is great design connects with people on an emotional level. And I want to speak about that for a second, because I think there are a lot of people in the world who work with architects and work with designers and spend huge amounts of time and money to create a kitchen or a living room or a space that has no emotional connection, that they're actually not necessarily even happy in, because they were led down a path of a design professional that didn't think about the emotional experience of the space. I'll give you a firsthand story. When I was 10, my parents moved from our original home. I was sharing a room with my 6-month-old brother. I was 10, too small. We had to move. We actually moved on the same street, not by any design, just by fluke, 2 blocks up into a much larger home. And for the first time, my parents worked with a designer to create the living room, dining room sort of experience. And the time that went in, and this was in the old days of the designers came with the fabrics, and there were meetings every Wednesday night. It was like a whole process. And it ended up in a living room, which was beautiful, and it was nice, and California shutters. And I'm a 10-year-old kid. What do I know from it? Looks good. But we never used it. We don't want to get anything on the couch. You can't go in there with that. Like literally once a year at best, we would sit in there when there was like a special reason. So all this time and all that, it was almost taken in the psychology of, let's create a museum. Everything is pretty and cold, and you're not allowed to touch anything.
Right.
I get the sense that the two of you and your firm take a very opposite approach to that. Hence your mantra point on connecting people on an emotional level. Just to close today, can you share with me your thoughts on those things and on that point of your mantra?
Yeah, I'll go first, and Janet, and you can close. I think a lot of there's one of the phrases in there that you referenced earlier, is that when I first started teaching, again, my background is industrial and product design, and I ended up in the interior or the space making place just purely by luck or accident. It wasn't strategic. So when I started teaching interior designers, one of the things that drove me batty about the people who were coming into the program is that they weren't designers. They had good taste, They understood how to select things out of catalogs. But if you ask them to design something, design that table, design that couch, design that wall that comes here, and they had no idea what to do. So how I shifted the context within the academic environment is that I started to recruit industrial designers and architects into the program, almost like an athletic recruiter. I went out and I went to high schools, I went to other departments and showed what we did to get that type of perspective into the program. So
it's 11 o'clock.
So in summary, the whole aspect of how we practice is that it comes down to making sure that the client or the user, depending upon the vocabulary you want to use, is engaged with us in this journey. We're not the black cape with the beret and the cane coming in, whirling around and throwing the beautiful object on the table and go, this is it. Take it or leave it.
Right.
We like to make sure that they're involved and that they feel literally integrated with the final outcome, because if not, it's strictly a portfolio piece that you get in, photograph, and get out, and you just hope they like it when you're done.
Beautiful.
Right.
Janet, your thoughts or your angle?
I think John said it really well. But that in order for a space to really connect on an emotional level, we need to, during that programming and discovery phase with our clients, really understand what drives them, what are their motivations, what is the essence of who they are, and what's their fire, what is it that emotionally moves them, and their family, and really having a lot of discussion around that, not let's scroll through Pinterest and pick out a white couch. And for those, there are those folks that just want catalog luxury, as we call it, where it's like, I just want what's on this page. And that's usually not the kind of folks we work with, because there's, we really want to go deep and ensure that the space feels timeless, is evocative of who they are as a family or as a brand, and is not something that's just kind of replicated everywhere. And maybe a little bit of quirkiness, a little, more than some, I hate the word whimsy isn't the word, but just something that really is evocative of who they are as people. And that's what makes any space unique. So.
Well, also as an addendum to this, in that if you look at, and you brought this up earlier in a different topic, but if people move into, and they say an existing house or an existing workplace, whatever that space is, it's fairly easy for the culture to adapt to it, because they really have no choice. This is where the kitchen goes, or this is where the conference area is. Here's the lobby. You accept it, and you can decorate it, maybe put some different finishes, and just, okay, this is it. It is difficult and in many cases painful, especially on the residential side, because we've become marriage counselors when you start from scratch. And if you are starting from something that doesn't exist and you have to understand and frame it, and there's no limitations outside of obviously budget, site, square footage, et cetera, you have to work within on codes, it is a tough process to go down. And I don't know what the statistic is now, but at one point, I think 10 years ago, I read the study, one of the top 20 or 30 causes for marriage interruptions, disruptions, perhaps divorces, is building a new house. It is unbelievably taxing upon relationships, because things come out that you never knew were there when you ask them, what do you really want? How do you really live? When you wake up, where do you go? In the evening, what do you, it's a volume that we can manipulate based upon how you really want to live versus how you're forced to live.
Teaching or trying to impart on people who come from a certain level of education and experience, how to morph into, your point, enough of a psychologist to extract what is the intended human behavior. That's a very hard thing to teach, because that just comes with, first of all, it's completely subjective. And it really can only come with time. You can't do it on a checklist or on a form. So you just can't. It's so deep, and I get the sense from, you know, my homework, my research, my following of your work, that is very much part of what makes your firm and what you do special to you and to your clients. It's that it's not in a box. It's not a set of letters after your name. It's the fact that you can go deep and really extract the nectar of what that client is looking for, even if they can't articulate it themselves.
Right. Sometimes you have to show them a little bit, but
Sure.
but it is important that they are part of the DNA of
Yes.
it. Instead of it being a designer's DNA, like the example you gave. I can't tell you
Yep.
how many portfolio shots that you see on a regular, you know, it's just not used. It looks great, but what the hell happened here, right?
Yep.
It's you know, it's kind of scary when you see this stuff.
Yeah, totally agree.
Becomes
It
a
has
formula.
been it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I learned so much in my research, and today we could probably go on for several hours, but what I'd like, if that's okay, is hopefully when travel is allowed again, California is at the top of my list. Most of our business, or I shouldn't say most, a big amount of our business is in California. I'm due to make a trip. I would absolutely love, if your schedules allow, to meet with you and maybe see some of your projects firsthand. It would be so much fun. And if before or after that Montreal is on your radar, please, it would be my honor to try to help you pick the right places to stay, see, eat at, experience. It's one of my great loves.
That would be
Well, we
great.
won't charge you at all if you want to camp a tent at Camp McCulley.
Right.
You know,
You
you
got-
can come
you
out
got-
and stay, and
Camp McCulley,
and we've
right
got tents for you. You know, you're more than welcome.
Yeah.
That's very thoughtful. I might, you know, maybe my wife can do like yoga classes for all of us, and
Yes.
you know, it could be
Yes,
so
that's
much
do that.
fun.
thing. I've been actually
So
wanting
much
to do
fun.
yoga classes down there. It's been proposed. So we will
All right.
charge the e-bikes up for you in anticipation of
Please.
arrival.
Have you guys ever been up to a hotel called the Surf Rider up in Topanga area,
You know, I think
Malibu?
I've heard
I
about
have
it.
not.
I haven't been there. I need to see it.
My wife went there about a year and a half ago and had, outside of a little hotel we go to in Nosara, Costa Rica, where we got married.
Oh, nice.
It is her favorite hotel experience. So simple
Okay.
and complete fluke. The first podcast, the first Fireside Chat episode I ever filmed, by complete fluke, was with the architect who designed that, and I didn't even know it until I was in the research. So
Yeah. We heard that. We
small world.
heard the podcast.
with Doug.
Yeah,
That's
it was
awesome.
great.
What a crazy, what are the chances?
So
Yeah,
cool.
it was a
That's
great
great.
interview. Yeah.
Thank you
you
so
very
much. It was really a pleasure, and I'm
Sure,
sure we'll be in touch then.
For sure. May I take this opportunity first with, you know, all of us going through COVID and how bad it is in California and Texas and other places, to wish you and your family and your loved ones continued health and safety. And in case I don't speak to you before, may I wish you a beautiful, beautiful holiday season, and wishing you only good things for 2021.
Thank you to you.
You as
Thank
well.